How's it going, everyone? This is Paul Garcia of ProjectSpurs.com with an updated salary cap video of the San Antonio Spurs' cap situation. Since the last time I made a video, which was way back on July 8th, this team has definitely changed in terms of the roster makeup. Let's go ahead and begin here. I'm going to go through first this current season, and then what some of the deals mean long term for the new players that have been added to the rosters or players that re-sign with the team. So let's first begin with DeMar DeRozan. He was acquired along with Jakob and a future 2019 first-round pick protected in exchange for Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green last week on Wednesday. So he's going to make $27.7 million guaranteed. LaMarcus Aldridge will make $22.3 million next season. Pau Gasol is going to make $16.8 million. If you go on to ProjectSpurs.com and look for an article called 2 Financial Questions After Leonard DeRozan Trade, I wrote an article basically explaining how, in a way, Gasol can kind of possibly be viewed as an expiring contract this coming season. So he's a name to watch in the event that the Spurs do look to trade his contract before the February trade deadline again. The details are all in there on why I have that thinking, those thoughts on Gasol's deal in that piece called 2 Financial Questions regarding after Leonard DeRozan trade. So again, that's the situation with Pau Gasol. He's guaranteed $16.8 million. Patty Mills is scheduled to make $11.5 million this coming season. The Spurs used their the non-bird rights of Rudy Gay to re-sign him up to the full amount, which is $10 million for Rudy Gay. Davis Bertans is going to make $7 million next season. By signing Marco Bellinelli to $6.1 million, the Spurs have hard capped themselves, and I'll explain what that means in a little bit as we get closer to the ending of this current roster sheet for the 2018-19 season. So Bellinelli is scheduled to make $6.1 million. The Spurs still have the $3.3 million biannual exception available. Now they can choose to use this season at any point to sign an outside free agent, or they can hold off and then they don't lose that access for next summer. When that biannual amount jumps up a little bit. So it'll kind of just be something to watch in terms of if the Spurs make another signing, whether it's now in the offseason or when players become free agents in the buyout market later on as we get closer to March. Bryn Forbes re-signed on a 2-year deal, so he's going to make $3.1 million this coming season. Jakob was acquired in the trade for Kawhi Leonard, so he's going to make $2.9 million. Manu Ginobili, I'm recording this at 7:32 p.m. on July 22nd. I just want to give a timestamp because we still don't know what his decision will be. He can either come back to continue playing in the NBA, so he'll come back to make $2.5 million next season on a guaranteed roster spot, or he can choose to retire. And if he does retire, then he will be waived, and his contract will either get his cap hit will take place this season, or they can stretch it out for 3 years. And basically, if he retired, a roster spot would be opened up for the Spurs. Dante Cunningham, they used the other part of the Spurs of the mid-level exceptions to sign him to a $2.4 million one-year deal. Lonnie Walker's beginning the first part of his rookie deal, so he's going to make $2.3 million this season. This coming season will be the last season that the cap hit applies to Tim Duncan's waived salary from when he retired a few years ago. Joffrey Laverne is signing in Fenerbahce, so his cap hold eventually, if they don't renounce it, it'll be removed. Nikola Milutinov, the date has passed for the Spurs to bring him over and buy out his contract with Olympiacos. So his cap hit will eventually be removed, and then it'll be applied again next summer. They'll have that choice to bring him over. Derek White is making a guaranteed $1.6 million. DeJounte Murray's making a guaranteed $1.5 million. David Lee, they still haven't renounced his cap hold, but it'll be removed if they don't apply it this coming season. Brandon Paul and Darren Hilliard are 2 names to watch because they have some interesting timelines to watch. Brandon Paul, basically, if he's not waived by August 1st, then he will make a guaranteed $1.3 million next season, so he'll be guaranteed a roster spot. So they have basically until August 1st to waive him if they don't want that cap hit of $1.3 million. Now, Darren Hilliard's a little bit tricky in terms of where exactly he stands. So if you read the CBA, there's a part in there that basically says that since Hilliard's about to play in his 4th season in the NBA, he's not allowed to be back on a 2-way contract. So if that's the case, then if he accepts this $1.3 million qualifying offer, he's basically guaranteed a roster spot. And if that happens, that he does accept it, then that would probably mean that Paul would have to be waived, or Paul could only probably stay if Ginobili decides to retire. Now, there's other language in the CBA that says that he still might be able to play on a two-way spot. So then basically, if he accepts that $1.3 million, well, then it would just be applied as a two-way contract where he'd make $77,000, as I hinted in the last video. So right now, I'm still trying to get some more clarification on the situation with Hilliard, but for right now, the Spurs do have a qualifying offer out there for him, so he's a restricted free agent, and that's the deadline for him to accept that qualifying offer is until October 1st, unless the team decides to extend that deadline. So Hilliard's a name to watch right now in terms of where the roster looks like going forward if he takes up one of those roster spots, if he gets one of those extra spots. And then they have $154 left of the mid-level exception, and Drew Eubanks is reported to be a training camp invite. So let's go ahead and kind of just take off some of these cap holds, remove them, and show you where the team salary stands right now. This is assuming that right now that they don't use the buyout exception because there haven't been any kind of reports. So with 16 players, including these cap holds of the non-guaranteed salary of Brandon Paul and the cap hold of Darren Hilliard. With 16 players, the Spurs have a roster at $122.9 million, which is basically $812,000 below the luxury tax. So right now they're not a tax team. And as I mentioned with Marco Bellinelli and Dante Cunningham, the Spurs are hard capped, and what that means again is they can never this season cross this line of $129.8 million. But they should be okay because again, look, they're still 6.8 away from that line, and if they do decide to use that biannual exception, it's only $3.3 million, so they would still be pretty safe in terms of not crossing this hard cap line. 16 players basically means that again that they would have to waive somebody before the season starts because you can't have 16. You can only go into the season with 15 full NBA contracts and two-way players. So again, the three names to watch right now still with this team is Manu Ginobili. Does he decide to come back or retire? Brandon Paul, do they decide to waive him before August 1st or guarantee a salary? And then Hilliard, again, if he accepts that, right now the CBA basically says that if he accepts that qualifying offer, it'll be his fourth year of NBA service and he will have a guaranteed spot. And then there's other language in there that says that maybe he could just still be on a two-way contract. So again, I'm trying to get clarification. If I do, I'll make sure to report that over on ProjectSpurs.com. So that's kind of where this team lies right now for this coming season. Now let's go ahead and look into the long-term future in terms of some of the players they acquired through trade, what their contracts look like on the books, and then also the players that they re-signed or signed in free agency. So the first player is DeMar DeRozan. He was acquired again in that trade for Kawhi Leonard. He's guaranteed $27.7 million this season. Next summer, he's guaranteed $27.7 as well. And then the following summer, in the summer of 2020-2021, he has a player option for $27.7 million. So he can decide by a certain date to exercise his player option and stay a Spur for that coming summer, for the next season, or he can decide to decline the player option and become an unrestricted free agent. And if that was the case, the Spurs would have his bird rights and they could decide to offer him the most money and the longest deal out of any team, or he could look to go sign elsewhere. If he were to accept this player option of $27.7 million in 2020, then the next summer they would have full bird rights on him for $41 million cap hold to re-sign him as well in 2021. So that's kind of where DeRozan's contract looks like for the foreseeable future. Like I mentioned with Pau Gasol, he's guaranteed $16.8 million. Next season, if he's not waived by July 1st, next summer, July 1st, 2019, his salary jumps all the way up to $16 million. Rudy Gay, like I mentioned, he re-signed it with the one-year deal. So next summer, the Spurs have the option, using the early bird rights, to re-sign him he has a cap hold basically of $13 million. So there's the option of re-signing him to a certain percentage of the salary cap. So that's something to watch for Rudy Gay, whether or not he continues staying a Spur after even this coming season. Davis Bertans signed a guaranteed 2-year deal, so he's making $7 million this season, $7 million next season, and then the following summer, he has a cap hold with full bird rights for $13.3 million, so he can re-sign into the future if he wanted to, if he remained on the team at that point. Bellinelli signed a 2-year deal, so he's making $6.1 million this season, $5.8 next season, and in the following summer again he has a cap hold of early bird rights for $7.6 million. They could try to re-sign him. Bryn Forbes has a 2-year deal that he signed guaranteed, so $3.1 million this season, $2.8 next season. And the following summer, they'll have full bird rights on him for $5.4 million. Yes, cap hold. Jakob Poeltl, He's only, I think, 22 or 23, so he's still on the early portion of his contract, of his rookie contract. He's making $2.9 million this season. Next summer, before free agency begins, the Spurs will have the option to exercise this team option or decline it. And if they exercise it, it means that he's locked up next season for $3.7 million. If they decline it, then he can become an unrestricted free agent. So right now, it probably looks like they're going to exercise that team option just because he's a young player still on a rookie deal. And then the following season, if he stays on the roster, he'll become a restricted free agent back in way forward in 2020, 2021. So that's the situation with Jakob Poeltl. Manu Ginobili, like I mentioned, if he comes back, then he'll earn $2.5 million this season. Then the following summer, next summer, they'll have full bird rights to whether or not to continue. If he wants to continue playing in the NBA or not, they can try to re-sign him. Dante Cunningham signed a one-year deal, so he's making $2.4 million this season. Next summer, they'll have non-bird rights on him for a $2.9 million cap hold, so they can look to try to re-sign Cunningham. Lonnie Walker is starting his NBA career, so he's going to make $2.3 million this season, $2.7 million next season. The following summer, they have a team option on him for $2.8 million, a $4.4 million team option the following summer, and then the last part of his contract, he can become a restricted free agent with the $6.3 million cap hold with that qualifying offer. Let's continue. Nikola Milutinov, even though his salary's not here, it'll be applied again next summer. Again, he'll be 24 years old, so the Spurs will have that option again to work with Olympiacos and try to complete a buyout if they want to bring him over to the NBA, and if he chooses to, if both parties are in agreement on that route. So that's basically where the roster stands. Again, we're still waiting on what decisions from Brandon Paul and Darren Hilliard. So this is kind of what the Spurs' cap situation looks like currently for this season, and also what those new players that were brought onto the team, where their futures lie in terms of the road ahead for the Spurs. So for ProjectSpurs.com, I am Paul Garcia.